Alright, so I have a book recommendation for you today, and the book I want to recommend I will get to in a moment, but first I need to show you this. Now this is the Westminster Confession. It says that on the front there. This is published by Banner of Truth. This is the Confession of Faith. It is the subordinate doctrinal standard of Presbyterian churches across the world. It used to be the case here for the Church of Scotland. I think they've ditched that now, but it's still the confessional standard for the Free Church of Scotland, the Free Presbyterian Church of Scotland, the Reformed Presbyterian Church of Scotland, and a couple of those other kind of flavours of Presbyterians that you get here in Scotland. Now, this is a really lovely edition. It's got the text of the Confession, it's got the text of the larger and shorter catechisms, it's got the text of the National Covenant and the Solemn League and Covenant, it's got the Directory of Public Worship, and it's got the Sum of Saving Knowledge, and a few other kind of historical documents that go hand in hand with the Westminster. And so if you're a Presbyterian, this is the book for you. This is a lovely hardback, cloth-bound, stitched binding. It is a book that's going to last for as long as you want to read and study from it. And so what's the problem with this book? This is not what I'm recommending. The problem with this book, well, there's not a problem with it exactly, except that I'm not a Presbyterian. And I have nothing against Presbyterians. Some of my best friends are Presbyterians. But it's not my confession. I would sign up to the 1689 Baptist Confession of Faith, or the Second London Confession of Faith of 1677, 1689, depending on how specific you want to be about the history of it being published. But there's nothing quite like this if you're a Baptist, at least not in the UK. I've not been able to find anything for a long time, and for ages the best you could get was this. Now this is also from Banner of Truth, that fantastic Reformed Calvinistic publisher here in Scotland, up in Edinburgh. But as you might expect from a Reformed publisher in Edinburgh in Scotland, there's a little bit of a leaning towards Presbyterian publishing, and so the Presbyterians, man, they're spoiled. They got a copy of this, a big bad boy that will last a lifetime, I'm sure. And as Baptists, confessional Baptists, we get this. Admittedly, there's a smaller market. And there's nothing wrong with this. You know, this is the one that I got when I was a bit sceptical about Calvinism, a bit sceptical about Reformed theology. I actually originally bought this so that I could disagree with it. And as I read through it and studied the scriptures that were attached to each of the statements in the confession, slowly I started off wanting to disagree, and ultimately ended up being persuaded by the theology in this little book. And so, you know, it's a nice little edition. It's the Puritan paperbacks edition. Pocket Puritans edition of the Baptist Confession of Faith. But it's also full of my notes and crossings out and scribblings of things that I said and thought about it when I wasn't yet convinced. And so recently I wanted to get myself a new copy, perhaps a nicer copy, perhaps something, if I could find it, as nice as this copy of the Westminster. And until recently I was out of luck, but just last year this was published. Now this is, as you can see, the 1689 Baptist Confession of Faith. It's published by a new publishing house here in Scotland called Parrēsia. Parrēsia Books, you can just see that written there. Parrēsia is the Greek word for boldness. And they are publishing some wonderful things at the moment. As well as the 1689, you can get copies of the Baptist Catechism, Hercules Collins's Orthodox Catechism, and I think it's Benjamin Keach's Short Confession of Faith from his church at Horselydown, where he was the pastor. But this is the flagship title that they publish. This is the only one they publish in hardback at the moment, but as you can see, it's a beautiful hardback edition. If anything, it's bound with even higher quality materials than the Westminster is by Banner of Truth. It's got the dust jacket with that lovely blue design on the front there, and the 1689 on front. But inside it is a nice sort of pleasingly textured cloth-bound edition. It's got the Baptist Confession of Faith in gold on the spine, and on the inside, the most important stuff is on the inside, right? It's got the text of the confession, but also underneath every statement it has the scriptures. Just like in that Banner of Truth edition of the Westminster, the scriptures not only referred to, but typed out and set underneath from the King James Version of the Bible, so that you can actually study within this book by referring straight to the scriptures that it is based on, right there in line. But also at the very back it has the appendix on believers' baptism, which is, I can never remember the name of the guy who wrote it. I think it's either Benjamin Cox or it's Nehemiah Cox, who wrote this appendix on believers' baptism. And the reason for that's a defence of believers' baptism or believers only baptism from the point of view of covenant theology, to say that the Reformed Baptist, the particular Baptist belief in baptism for believers only and not for the infants of believers is not based on a dispensational theology. It's not based on a hard discontinuity between the Old and the New Testament. It's rooted in covenant theology. It's rooted in the covenant made with Abraham. And so if you want a good and short defence of the covenant case for believers' baptism, then you'll find it at the back of this nice edition of the 1689. And so if you're a 1689 Baptist, if you're a confessional Reformed or particular Baptist, there's really no better edition of this that you can get, at least if you live in the UK. This is the best one I've been able to find, and I love it. So I'll put the links below for where you can buy this. I'll put links for Parrēsia Books in their website, and they've got a YouTube channel as well. I'll put links for all this stuff below. But that's my recommendation today. If you are a confessional Baptist, or if you're just interested in confessional Baptist theology, 1689 federalism, pick up a copy of this. It's surprisingly affordable, excellent materials, well bound, beautifully laid out, and of course it's got the text of the subordinate standard of the 1689. Which is our understanding as Reformed Baptists of the true, the faithful, the sum of the teaching of Scripture regarding all these things that it speaks very clearly about. So, bless you guys. I hope you like this. I hope you enjoy the book if you pick it up, and I hope you enjoy the video. Check back in soon. Hopefully I'll have something else for you before too long.